I am so privileged today to introduce to you Nicole Benson. She is an international speaker and workshop facilitator for companies like Google, YouTube, Netflix, and eBay. She's recognized as a woman of influence by the Silicon Valley Business Journal, and Nicole's innovative style transforms dry research into vibrant interactive experiences designed for well-being and connection by presenting science-backed ways to be happier. Congratulations, Nicole, for having your article published by Authority Magazine recently titled Effective Strategies for Mental Well-Being. You worked in an incredibly stressful environment at Google. What are your biggest takeaways about mental health from that experience?
Oh my goodness. Well, first off, I am excited to be chatting with you, Nancy.
Oh,
Yes, it was a privilege and a challenge to be working at this incredible company that, as cheesy as it sounds, I really think is making the world a better place. But with that comes challenges to constantly be at the top of your game. And when you're going at that speed all the time, it is inevitable that you are going to hit burnout. And so
yes.
I think some of the takeaways that I would have are, I think I mentioned this earlier, but when somebody has a broken bone, nobody looks at you weird for going to the doctor and getting help for that. And we need to treat our brains, our minds, our well-being with that same lens, because if we just continue going and going and going, we're going to hit that burnout. Um, so I don't know if I even answered the question exactly, but paying attention to those moments and letting yourself get to a point where you are using what I call well-being band-aids, little things to help you not get to that point of burnout.
I understand in the article that you did get burned out, and that kind of sent you in a new trajectory. Before you answer that question, I love what you said about mental health needs to be, we need to remove the stigma around getting help for our emotional condition, our mental well-being. And you're helping to do that. So your burnout, your personal burnout sent you in a new direction. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So when I was at Google, my last role there was managing a well-being program for Google's executive female leaders. That was one of 9 programs that I was managing, but that one was my absolute favorite. And I loved being able to be in an environment with these inspiring leaders. But what I quickly saw was as soon as we started getting into these circles, people would start, not everybody, but there would definitely be tears. And it was a constant theme that people were saying, as soon as this fire is put out, then I can relax. Or I keep telling my family, as soon as this project is done, then I won't be working nights and weekends. And I realized watching these people that were levels ahead of me having the same exact conversations with their family. And I was thinking, wait, I thought by the time you got to be an executive, you would have people to manage all these different pieces of your life. And so you'd have a little bit more well being. And so that was one of the straws, I guess, on my camel's back to show me that maybe climbing this corporate ladder isn't what I want, because they're having those same challenges that my peers and all the people around me are having. So all that to say, that was one of the things that really sent me on this trajectory. I got to a place where I burned out myself, which was totally ironic because I was managing a well-being program.
Yes.
And I totally burnt out. And talking about that stigma, some of the help that I got along the way, I talked to my doctor, I talked to a couple therapists. One of the therapists recommended I see a psychiatrist. And that word in my head was really scary. I thought, a psychiatrist. That means I'm going to be shipped off and people are going to think that I'm not capable of taking care of my children. My kids are going to be taken away. I'm not going to have my job. And I went into this spiral of thinking, if I'm not mentally healthy, what does that mean about me? What does that mean about my family? Um, So in any case, I went on a mental health leave, which was again one of those things that in my head I thought, I can't ever come back from this because people will look at me differently.
Okay.
And I took a step away, got myself back to a healthier mental place. I again talked to those therapists and got some different types of help. And I decided not to go back, but not because of that fear of how I was going to be perceived. I really saw these 5-minute activities that I started doing really started making an impact on my own mental well-being. I started talking about them with my friends, and people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Everybody needs to know about this. And so then that was another thing that was just in that column of maybe you should start talking about this in a different way as opposed to just to people at Google who have these resources.
Well, how amazing that you came up with a solution for yourself or multiple solutions. And then you've turned it into a business. You said you used to think you needed a 2-week vacation on a tropical island to relax, but you developed 1, 3, and 5-minute activities that reduced your anxiety. Tell us about them.
Oh, these are my absolute favorite. So I think a lot of times we think that we've got to, completely disconnect in order to get back to center. But a lot of times all we have is 5 minutes before our next video call or our next meeting. And what do you do then? And so that's these well-being band-aids. Absolutely get help from professionals and therapy and dig into bigger things. But when you only have those 5 minutes, those are the things that I love to teach. One activity is based on a few different teachings I've learned, but I call it my favorite things. Have you ever seen The Sound of Music?
Yes.
So if you remember, there's I think a thunderstorm, and she starts saying raindrops on roses, whiskers on kittens. And it's shifting your focus from thinking about this big, scary storm into things that bring you joy. And a way that you can do this in real life is by actually pausing for 1 minute, and you can say them out loud. You can write them down. I love doing them with my friends or my family around the dinner table. And for a minute straight, you just say, I love cheese. I love flannel sheets. I love a lot of heavy cream in my coffee. I love the smell of the air after it rains. And so your brain can't think of two things at once. So if you are just shifting to think about those things that bring you joy, it can, again, bring you back to center or just shift your focus. And again, this is not about ignoring negative things or not processing those emotions. This is when you just have those 5 minutes and you need to get out of overthinking or overwhelm about something that's stressful.
I love that. And to think of just one thing after another that I love, it has to change the energy in my head, which is, of course, what relieving anxiety has to do. Are there any other tools you'd like to mention?
I mean, that's a quick one that I use. I even use that one when I'm stuck in traffic because I'll start to get really annoyed about something and I will just start to say those I loves. If I want to get deeper into examining maybe where this thought is coming from, if I'm either having an imposter syndrome thought or I'm spinning in overwhelm or I'm overthinking and I keep thinking about this thought over and over and over and I'm not making any forward progress, I use Socratic questioning, which you can just Google. There's a ton of good resources. I also have a free worksheet that people can grab, and it forces you to examine this thought. So, is this thought what I'm thinking about? Is this absolutely true?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, that's the only question you need to ask yourself
Yeah.
because you're like, oh, wait, maybe this actually isn't true. And
Yeah.
then you start looking for evidence supporting that thought if you really want to look into it. And then you look for evidence that is opposite of that thought. So maybe I think, oh my gosh, I totally bombed that interview with Nancy. I'm so embarrassed. And then I start thinking about it afterwards. Okay, what evidence do I have that's supporting that I totally failed? What evidence do I have to show that maybe it went all right? And can I develop more objective thoughts as opposed to just how I'm thinking about it in the moment? Another tool that is related is to think about it two different ways. So you can either think about, let's say my best friend just came to me and said, oh my gosh, I just totally bombed this interview. What are things that I might tell that person? Or to think about, what are things that my best friend might tell me? And so sometimes inviting in a more compassionate voice when we're not so self-compassionate can be a good tool as well.
I think what you're describing, I would probably call it change in belief. To go from believing that you bombed to believing it wasn't that bad, it was okay, is a shift in belief, and you're giving a process to help you shift a belief so that you can feel less stress. I love it. I also love your advice to seek awe. What are a few things that bring you a sense of wonder?
Oh my gosh, so many. Again, I used to think that I'd have to wait for these amazing things to happen in my life to feel awe. And then I started studying positive psychology and things like that. And I realized that there are ways that we can induce that feeling in 5 minutes, even if you never leave your house. So if I were to give you a super easy example, sometimes I will pull up a YouTube video and I will just look at the size of Earth compared to other planets or our solar system. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we are so tiny. And things like that just blow my mind. Or looking at like the size of a blue whale compared to a human. Um, I like going outside. I live in the Pacific Northwest and looking at the trees and imagining this giant tree. And I'm like, what was around 100 years ago? What stories could this tree tell? Um, or yesterday, a dragonfly got stuck in our trampoline. And so because of that, I got to look at the body, look at the wings of this dragonfly as I was trying to help it escape, which it did escape. But just getting to see all these intricate details that so often we're moving too fast to see. So yeah, looking at all the stars in the sky, looking at an airplane. Like I am not an engineer. I don't even know how all of this stuff works. And I'm like, this is wild. We're like flying in the air.
Yes.
So having that almost childlike wonder to realize that all the things that we start to take for granted and normal, even okay, I'm going off on a tangent because I told you I love this stuff so much.
I
But
love
sometimes I get in my shower and I turn on a tap and I'm like, I just turned a knob and I have hot, clean water flowing into my house. And then I
it.
think about where would I have been 500 years ago? Would I have had a well and I would have had to bring it all up and then I would have had to start a fire and then I would have had to warm the water. Just remembering all these things gives me a sense of awe.
I love that. And I love your examples. You remind me, I have a gigantic old pepper tree in the back corner of my yard. I call her the Grand Dame. And I think, how old is she? And what was going on in my neighborhood when that seed was planted? It just, it does give me that sense of awe or wonder
Yes.
about the life of that very big old tree in my yard.
Yes. If these leaves could talk.
Yes, I wish they could. I've even, go up to the trunk, which is so big I can't put my arms around it, and just touch it and can feel the energy flowing through that tree. What are one or two things that you practice daily to help you maintain your work family balance?
I have 3 children, and 98% of the time, I don't want to say every night, but we try to every night at dinner go around and say 3 good things from our day. And even my 2-year-old knows what's going to happen. He comes to the table and he says, Mommy, how are your good things? And that's
Oh,
his way of saying, what were your 3 good things from the day? And for the kids, they could range from anything from, this is a delicious dinner to I got to see my best friend at recess.
mhm.
Um, and there's a couple things here. First, it encourages us, or I don't even know what the right word is, but it reminds us throughout the day to be looking for these things.
Yes.
My 9-year-old sometimes will say, "Oh, mommy, this is going to be one of my 3 good things tonight." Like throughout the day, noticing that this was a wonderful thing that happened today. And they don't have to be big things because a lot of times when we have conversations with people and we're like, what's going on? We think about these giant accolades. I just got promoted at work or whatever it is. And it's like, I had my most favorite sandwich today from my favorite cafe. So three good things is something that we practice. I have an ADHD brain. My brain is constantly moving. So doing a silent meditation is challenging for me. So
Mhm.
I love guided meditations and guided visualizations. When I like to lie down as opposed to sitting, but I like to lie down and turn on a 10 or 15-minute guided meditation. It forces me in a very gentle, nice, fun way to be present, to just focus on what is happening right now, to be mindful. And I really like to do um, future kind of abundance meditations where I imagine my best possible future. And I imagine, this is what I'm doing with my kids, or this is a family vacation one day we're going to take. And I like to imagine my best possible future. So guided meditations and three good things are things that I do almost daily.
I love your three good things example for your family. I mean, you're really training them to look for the good in their lives rather than focusing on whatever might be upsetting at the moment. I love that. I'm going to quote you now. Quote, I believe we can make the world a better place by unapologetically prioritizing our own happiness and well being. Our happiness is a catalyst for the greater good. How did you arrive at that belief?
Oh, so one of my favorite things to do is read research on well-being and happiness. I find it fascinating. And some of the research that's coming out, Barbara Fredrickson does a lot of research on this, but they look at priming people with positive emotions first and then putting them into a situation and seeing how the person who is primed with a positive emotion versus the person who wasn't, how they approach these situations. There was one fascinating study that looked at physicians, and they found that physicians made better medical decisions when they were primed with positive emotions. And again, this wasn't a big, huge thing that they did. They handed the doctors a bag of candy and said, thank you so much for coming and participating in this, assessing this hypothetical patient. And they didn't eat the candy first, so they didn't attribute it to any sort of sugar rush. And then with the others, I think they gave them the bag of candy afterwards, or they didn't give it to them. And the people who were primed with this simple act of gratitude, I believe, spent longer looking at the patient. They got more creative. But in essence, at the end, they were more likely to correctly diagnose this hypothetical patient just by being primed with these positive emotions. They did one study where they asked people to look at like a picture, and the people who were primed with positive emotions spent more time looking around the periphery as opposed to just the center. This is where that thought of tunnel vision comes into play. It can be really great when you're in stress and you need to figure out this thing. But in normal life, if you want to be more creative, if you want your team to have more innovative solutions, do the favorite things activity with them for 2 minutes first, and then go look at that problem, and you might come up with more creative solutions. And then the last example I'll give is there was one study, and the researcher's name is failing me at this point, but he's also a professor, and he looked at how people were able to look past cultural and racial differences and notice more oneness with each other. So me seeing you as a human, as opposed to we have different political views or the way we were raised in our cultures. They were able to notice more oneness with each other when they were primed with those positive emotions. So that is where I came up with, if we are truly being happier, a lot of times people think that being happy or wanting to be happy is this selfish goal, but happier people are actually more charitable. We look out for our community, we are kinder. And so when we are happier, when we are focused on making sure that we are taking care of our mental health is good, then we not only help ourselves, but we help each other. Physicians will make better medical decisions. People will be able to hopefully see more people as humans. And we're in such a
Yes.
interesting political time right now. And it's like, we're all humans and we all love our kids and we all want what's best for our families. And can we focus on those things and come from that place while we figure out some of these other things?
I love what you're saying. I agree wholeheartedly with it. It's so easy, it's so inexpensive and easy to spread gratitude around. You know, I commented on I was purchasing something and the clerk had the most beautiful skin and she was an elderly woman. And I said, "Your skin is just beautiful." And she got all flustered but excited. She said, "I'm going to have to go look in the mirror. I don't even notice my skin anymore." But, you know, just that little comment made her day better. I love what you're saying. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
I love what you just said. I mean, so many times we have the opportunity to say something kind to another person. And the fact that you just said that that clerk got flustered, how many times have you complimented? I'm going to speak to women specifically because we have so much underlying stuff going on, but you say, "Oh, that's such a beautiful dress." And someone's like, "Oh, this old thing," or, "Oh, thanks, I got it on sale." I would love for us to just start practicing saying thank you.
Yes, yes,
I wouldn't have worn this dress had I not liked it myself, probably. So thank you.
yes,
And just taking compliments, which doesn't have a lot to do with well-being, but your story just reminded me that we can practice gratitude and we can also practice receiving as
yeah.
well.
You know, several years ago, I realized I was so bad at receiving a compliment. And I realized that when I downplayed it or excused it or whatever, I was returning a very precious gift. Someone had just given me a precious gift of a compliment. And when I didn't receive it graciously, I was throwing it back in their face. So I appreciate what you said. That was an important lesson for me a few years ago. So our visitors, our viewers can read the full article on Authority Magazine titled "Effective Strategies for Mental Well-Being" by Nicole Benson. I suspect Nicole has a whole lot more she could pack in to that article or this interview if we had the time. You can contact her at NicoleBenson.com. That's NicoleBensen.com. Or watch her free workshop titled "How to Be Happy Now" at NicoleBenson.com. Gosh, it was such a pleasure to meet with you today. Your philosophy, what you teach, your well-being, your positive attitude have really added a lot of positive energy to my day today. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Nancy. This was fun.
It was fun. It's such a pleasure. I will hope to see you again, and thank you again for being part of this video interview. I'm having trouble turning the recording off.
They'll edit that